Wow. So after such empowering sessions, it's a difficult task for me. And would like to thank the organizers for inviting me and sharing my thoughts. I'm really humbled. Would like to start by saying I was just listening very carefully, a lot of things being said. So 25 years, first 25 years of my life, I grew up where three of us male in the house. So myself, my younger brother, father, and mother. In last 15 years, now I'm staying with my wife, my mother-in-law, and my daughter. So perspectives change. The ignorance turns into awareness, right? And I think it is such summits and more such summits which are needed to spread this awareness. And maybe I learned it took a lot of time than what I should have taken to learn a lot of things, turn my ignorance into awareness. But such summits definitely helps in getting the errors faster and better. Now, whatever we heard till now, I would say that in my understanding and opinion, we are addressing maybe 1%, 2% of the women which are more urban, the kind of challenges which we face. I'm trying to focus, or I will try to focus and share my perspective of balance 97, 98%, the rural woman, the peri-rural, urban, peri-urban kind of woman, and in particularly entrepreneurship as a lens. And of course, there are several challenges which are common, but I'll also try to touch upon the financial aspects and the challenges which in our understanding they face and what are the possible solutions and likewise. So I would say the initial, whatever we heard till now, very clear that the urgency is acknowledged by everyone, right? Everybody acknowledges the urgency. But let me try and share some more data points. Some of it may be a little repetition, but different perspective, as I said, more of rural women. So the data suggests that about 15% of entrepreneurs, 15 to 20%, the range changes, are women entrepreneurs in the country, out of which 98% largely are micro businesses or small businesses. And when we say that, they employ less than 5 people, right, compared to men. If you look at the overall scenario in that, if you further break down, 83% of such women are solopreneurs, meaning they are individual women entrepreneurs, and 16% are agri-entrepreneurs. So almost 99% come from that, and only 1% is maybe representing, part of it is being represented in this room. Hence, whatever we are discussing today, I think the urgency is definitely there now. The opportunity is definitely there now. We often speak of demographic dividend, right? And we have heard this several times from our government to likewise, and the role it can play in terms of exponential growth, acceleration, and advancement, but also the downfall, what somebody spoke earlier, that kind of, if we don't address this issue, which is women entrepreneurship, the kind of unfilled economic promise it can lead to is extremely critical. And somebody also mentioned about equal number of women, right? So the data suggests that there are 467 million working age women in India. And if the problem is not addressed, the problem is going to get compounded. Shivani just mentioned a while ago in terms of data points, and I agree, IMF data suggests that India would be 27% richer if this part is addressed. India would grow by 8% by 2030 if this part is addressed. So too many data points, and I don't want to repeat some of it. But the real question is, and since I'm supposed to speak more on the financial aspects, the key questions which all of us need to answer is, what is needed to foster women entrepreneurs to be engaged with formal financial services and financial inclusion? What are the financial inclusion efforts that India needs to make or further enhance to enable growth of the women entrepreneurs? What needs to be done to support such women entrepreneurs from an access to credit point of view? And last and foremost important, since I mentioned that I would like to touch more on the rural women entrepreneurs, I don't know, all of you sitting here would be aware, but there are close to 9 million SHG groups which exist today, group of women, and contributing to close to 92 million women entrepreneurs as part of it. If we look at today, India is given as an example by world in terms of the microfinance ecosystem and SHG ecosystem which has been created in terms of access to finance. But what are the challenges now women in rural areas are facing? In our understanding, it is like they have outgrown, some of them have outgrown the SHG financing structure and they want to grow, but they are really restricted because of the structure which exists today. And the real question which we need to answer is that what support such women entrepreneurs need to be helped in terms of going out of the SHG structure and get more financing. And to me, there are two answers to it, two possible answers to it, and it will go back to some of the things which were said earlier. One is, I think, we need to focus a lot on design, the solutions which are needed in terms of access to credit. And this design should be in line with the barriers which some of the earlier speakers mentioned, so I'll not get into it. We hear this word gender neutral, right, a lot of times. All the policies which are there, and somebody also mentioned about that it is like unconscious bias, right? Similarly, the policy also is unconscious at time, unconsciously made. And how do we kind of move from a gender neutral lens in today's scenario to what I would call it as a gender transformative lens? I think it's extremely critical. So first is the design part of it, and then I'll come to what we are trying to do. The second part is, I would say, scale, because we are talking of 467 million working age women. What needs to be done? So I would say a lot of people sitting here, a lot of people outside are making siloed efforts. We are doing something, somebody is doing something. How do we convert, and this is one such forum, but how do we convert such siloed efforts into, I would say, a structured coalition in terms of effort in this direction? And second, I would say any transformative change, philanthropy plays a very important role. And in this case, how philanthropic capital can play such a role is what we need to figure out. So design and scale is what I believe are the two probable solutions to work on this. Now, of course, we know there are several factors which affects women entrepreneurships, and I will not get into kind of detail, but I'll just try to touch upon access to finance. So what are some of those challenges when we work with rural women, we encounter in terms of the challenges they face in line with access to credit? There is a World Bank report which suggests certain data points, and I just picked that number from that 32% of women accounts are inactive as we speak today, while there are accounts that only 10% of women entrepreneurs borrow from formal finance means, otherwise rest of them go to informal means. Not that the men numbers are higher, that is also 15%. But if we kind of decode this, at the heart of it or at the root cause of it, I think our understanding that these are because of the unseen and unaddressed barriers which exist, and some of it were spoken about, and the gender norms which exist today. And if we further do a deep dive of it, our understanding suggests is that a lot of women, not here also, but rural also, what we call it as time poverty, right? All of the women, as was spoken earlier, at home, you're so busy that while you are capable to do a lot of things, but because of the stereotype and what you have seen your mother, grandmothers, and likewise, it is more of unpaid care work. You're so busy, you're not able to get into anything. So that is one demand side problem. Another demand side problem which I often see, and I have been in field for last 25 years, I often see is the stereotyping and the limited opportunity or perception that exists that women entrepreneur, okay, then beauty and wellness is the right business, apparel is the right business, and maybe BPO is the right job, but nobody talks of beyond 3, 4, 5 areas. So that limited economic opportunities, and hence the policies also are like that. Assets, somebody spoke, the collateral related issues, and likewise the mobility restrictions because of the family and likewise traveling outside. Now the access to mobile is there, but the usage of mobile phones, and you would be surprised that all of us sitting here are privileged and we know how to use technology, but if you go further deeper rural down, They even don't know that their mobile, where the OTP comes, if in banking, OTP number is of their husbands, and while their mobile is only there for to talk, and likewise, so there are several such challenges. And of course, we heard a lot about the decision-making challenges of the women. On the supply side, the financial institutions, if you look at banks, and I see Bandhan Bank and a couple of banks are here, I think all the policies are more made being gender neutral and not really thinking of the transformative things. And hence the people who are involved from the bank side also are kind of not trained to deal with such women entrepreneurs. So the kind of, and I think it was spoken a while ago when VC looks at women entrepreneurs, the kind of questions being asked to a woman versus male. I think similar challenges happens also when we look at the financial ecosystem in terms of banks. And the most and foremost important is the support in kind of structure, which is the infrastructure. While the digital outreach is there in terms of mobile and likewise, the information in terms of women entrepreneurs' behavior, I would say their specific customized need in terms of financial requirement is very different than that of a man. And the most important thing or the challenge which banking ecosystem, and I'm sure if you ask Bandhan Bank sitting here, they would say that they do not have the gender disaggregated data which is required for them to make requisite policy decisions. And the last is of course the capacity building also of the banking staff. So enough of data, enough of background, I would say. So what is that is needed in terms of solutioning to look at empowering more and more women entrepreneurs into financial inclusion kind of scenario? So I believe that we'll have to all look at from a gender neutral lens to a gender transformative lens. And what it means, that if you want to solve the access to credit issue, it cannot be solved by just looking at access to credit as one problem. It requires a holistic view, not only looking at one barrier, but multiple barriers. And what I mean by that is that go beyond providing solutions to access to credit. How do we look at policy aspect? Because banks can only work looking at within that framework of policy. How should we look at policy aspect? A lot of work needs to be done on the advocacy and communication. One of that is being done today, but a lot more effort needs to be done across. Third, I would say this is the largest effort. I started off by saying 25 years of my life and 15 years of my life, my perspective changed, but I learned by experience. How do we change mindset, not only of women entrepreneurs, but I mean entire ecosystem around women entrepreneurs, be it the financial ecosystem, be it their family itself, be it the society and likewise. I think that is the major effort which is needed to kind of transform, to move to the gender transformative kind of requirement. So I represent this organization called as Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship. What we do is kind of help creation of new entrepreneurs, and how do we focus on growth of existing entrepreneurs. And in this case, since we are talking of women entrepreneurs in particular, we are currently working on several initiatives, but one of the initiatives which I would like to share, what I quoted and how we are trying to practice, that is we are working with National Rural Livelihood Mission and working with 3 states, which is Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, where we are trying to help 10,000 women entrepreneurs in rural areas to kind of who have outgrown the SHG financing structure to take financial support from banks as an individual entrepreneurs. And we thought that, okay, it's simple because they are part of SHG, and the kind of challenges they face is like, it's very, very, I would say sometimes humbling to understand that. But in short, so there are 3 stakeholders with whom we deal with. One is the woman entrepreneurs herself. So she doesn't know at times what kind of her numbers are. I'm talking of typical rural solo entrepreneur. She needs a lot of support in terms of mentoring as to, okay, how do you come up with that number data which needs to be presented to the bank. She even doesn't know that, okay, where she needs to go for what kind of schemes that exist where she can go, and likewise, largely they are very happy to work as part of SHG and don't take initiative, and they definitely need a lot of support in building their confidence to deal with the financial institutions, with the bankers. They do not know how to answer and they are not very comfortable going to the bank and talking to them. Maybe yes, 1-2% are, but most of them are not. Hence, one of the areas which we work is how do we shift the mindset of such rural women entrepreneurs to build that confidence. And it's a process, and it can't be done through a program. The second critical stakeholder is the financial institution or the public sector banks. As I mentioned, they need a lot of data to change their policies. So we are working closely with them to kind of help get that data from such women entrepreneurs and then bring in the requisite customization, simplification, and flexibility, what a bank would need to kind of change that. And the most and foremost important thing, last thing is, for any transformative change, what we believe is that we need a catalyst. In this case, the catalyst is National Rural Livelihood Mission and the State Rural Livelihood Mission in these 3 states, which kind of works as a catalyst. And what we are trying to do is build the capacity of their ground level staff to kind of bring this transformative change. The idea was not to share what game does, but the idea is to share like programs, initiatives like this needs to be there at a scale in multiple areas, access to credit, and we have just taken a lens of solopreneur, solo women entrepreneurs. Likewise, how do we identify such transformative initiatives which doesn't necessarily lead to some outputs which are in numbers, but which leads to the mindset change, what we are talking with, we have been talking since morning, which leads to policy change, which leads to the entire ecosystem change, and likewise. Last but not the least, on this part, of course, overall, as I mentioned, there are a lot of things needs to be done, but if I have to just summarize, so from a woman entrepreneurship point of view, how can a transformative intervention look like, in my opinion? So one, we need to look at the resources. Resources in the sense, and this is access to credit lens, how do you have tailored financial products which are tailor-made for women sitting here, entrepreneurs sitting here, or rural and likewise? It cannot be the same as what it is available otherwise. How do we build the capacity of such women entrepreneurs and by identifying gaps? What is needed to change in terms of the assets, policies, access to network, as somebody was talking. The second, as I mentioned, the financial institution aspect is itself. How do you enable data to be given to financial institutions to come up with those gender transformative policy? I think that's the biggest thing which needs to be done. And the last part is, I would say, everything what we are saying has to happen in an agency form. By that, what I mean is that it cannot be a program or an initiative. How it can come up like a overall ecosystem initiative, and what that results into cultural shift overall in terms of women, but more importantly for other stakeholders as well. So, not sure whether I kind of covered the business plan and other aspects part of it, but what I really wanted to touch upon in this short time was that, and highlight that what we need is not one lens of access to finance or access to market or capacity building and likewise. We need to look at overall ecosystem and the transformative change in the gender neutral to gender transformative lens to kind of lead to the direction which we want to lead to. So I can pause here. Happy to take any specific questions if anybody have. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming to the grassroots level. Since last 3 hours I'm waiting. Okay. I kept on telling on. I'm privileged. माइक भी ये कहता है मास्टरों को जरूरत नहीं होती है सॉरी I'm Asha. Thanks for bringing up that grassroots level, and I appreciate your efforts. I'm sure Gabe is doing really great job. Just one observation that compared to Bangladesh, when we evaluate microfinance in India, one of the challenges or the way of functioning, like it's grow your income, save and then borrow. But I think from what you spoke also, the emphasis seems to be on credit borrowing.
True.
I have been working at whatever slums and with the rural India for last 5 decades. So from personal experience, I think this change in mindset is very important. And earlier we realized because जैसे ही है बैंक आने वाले हैं तो हमें लोन मिलेगा क्या कितना मिलेगा क्यों okay
True.
any efforts on that direction, I would be very happy to listen. Secondly, I also feel that access to banking itself. I'm just 2.5 kilometers away from here, like, okay, we're very opposite the airport and all. The domestic help who comes, very efficient, well-standard, studied, her problem is her Aadhaar card is from Uttar Pradesh. And from her efforts, that's what she's saying, I have to make personal efforts. बैंक वाले अकाउंट नहीं खोलने देते हैं बोलते हैं वही यूपी का है तो वही खुलेगा यहाँ नहीं इफ दिस इज स्टिल द रियलिटी आधार कार्ड है बट एड्रेस यूपी का है तो बम्बई में बैंक का अकाउंट नहीं माई विलेज इन कच्छ 5 नियर बाई विलेजेस नो बैंक एट ऑल we're running a small effort of like okay training women which is for 24 years going on with health center etc. But if when I'm to tell those girls ki go and open the account, they have to travel for 10 to 15 kilometers, even for one visit. Who will bear the transport cost? How many times? Banking at the doorstep. I have taught this for 48 years, but I'm still waiting for the days to change. So I think all this elite discussion, I'll be very happy. I'm Kshiti's mother, by the way. Proud that she evening scholar. She worked with Baba Hamte's organization and said, I won't come back from Samaj Pragati Sahayog. But that's not how the life is. So when are we going to really touch upon these issues? And any experiences of that, I would be very delighted to hear.
No, ma'am, thank you for bringing this up. All the points what you made are in some form or the other are extremely valid points. And that's how, first question, what you said, I have no data to share, but I completely agree that mindset shift is the most critical and important aspect I have been emphasizing in my short talk. Second, I can add to some examples what you gave, and I don't think because we work very closely with banks, we work with SIDBI to a lot of PSUs, SBI, and likewise in solving this problem, very responsive, want to do a lot of work. I think the challenge is one on the data side, the availability of data side for them. Second is the policy itself. They need to work on, and if I had to give some examples, so there is this, all of you would have heard of Lakpati Didi, right? Which we hear. So when the banks have that policy in place, for our cohort of 10,000 women, the conversion is much higher in a case of SBI vis-a-vis some other banks which are not having that, because there is a policy in place. Some other challenge, you give example of bank account, Aadhaar card, and likewise. So a woman entrepreneur have part of SSG having a bank account in a particular branch, but that is some kilometers away. And for her individual business, if she wants to get loan or access to credit from another branch, it becomes a huge challenge because they would insist that you go to, and some of these are more policy. So I would say that's why a lot more such effort needs to happen. And then a lot of advocacy effort is needed, in my opinion, to kind of change those policies, which will also enable, while the intent is there, but the policy restricts. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is sort of similar. I just wanted to know, like, what is Global Alliance doing for? Sorry. So I just wanted to know, like, what Global Alliance is doing for the entrepreneurs, the women entrepreneurs. So for getting, say, in the sense of like getting a loan. Say I don't want to go for equity. I would like to get a loan, maybe a mortgage-free loan, or maybe an interest-free loan. So how do I go about, and whom do I approach? Is there a platform where we can get this valuable information, or is there an alliance, or is GAIN helping the lady women entrepreneurs in some way? That's something which I would like to.
So happy to take offline, ma'am, but very quickly, in short, we are a backbone organization. So we ourselves do not kind of help individual women entrepreneurs to work on that. Our focus is more on, as I have been emphasizing, more on how do we bring that ecosystem shift or those systemic barriers that are existing today for women entrepreneurs, and we have identified two areas. One is access to credit, and second is access to market. Access to market, whether maybe people in this room, women, all of you in this room are more empowered and have more information access, but if you go out, people are not aware of a lot of info. So these are the two lines we have taken. We are not yet reached there that to help individual women entrepreneurs, but we are focusing on ecosystem shift. But happy to connect with some other people who are part of our alliance and they do similar work. We as GAME do not do, yeah.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ketul. I'm Ketul Acharya from iDobro Impact Solutions. We work just as you have MSME. We believe in WSG, which is Women, Social and Green Entrepreneurs, and so obviously work with them. My quick question is, women entrepreneurs across the spectrum definitely need help. There's no arguments on that. But what we call at least the aspirational women at least know how to get to you maybe, or to anybody else, right? And then SHGs, which you spoke about, while again, of course, a lot of help required, there are enough of CSR programs, government schemes and everything. What happens to this missing middle? And that's something that we have been focusing on for the last 15 years, in fact, yeah? And this missing middle is, the kind of women who obviously do not have the kind of exposure that aspirational women have. On the other hand, neither are they that poor or that kind of weak that they would say, I need to be in a cohort to be able to get support, right? They're basically homemakers, and therefore they kind of suffer this double whammy where because they're homemakers, they are seen as not this thing. And on top of that, they are not even given the respect they deserve at home. So they lose out on all their aspirations and they don't get the respect. So is there anything that you probably are working on?
So we are thinking, ma'am, and thank you for bringing this up. What we feel that one of the areas we need to work in, what we call it as, how do we create that circle of influence? And in our mind, we are thinking of some structure, happy to collaborate with anyone in that sense. But can we identify such 100 women entrepreneurs, role models? And those role models are like, it need not be necessarily sector, geography, and likewise those 100. And how do we create program around that to bring in that advocacy aspect? I think nothing works. If you recall, skilling, now everybody knows about skilling initiative, right? But before 2014, when there was no Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, skilling was looked at differently. Now it is looked at differently. Now also there may be a lot of questions, but if you look at Sachin Tendulkar was one influencer who was brought in, and then the entire perspective of looking at a plumber or a technician changed than what we used to look at, right? Something similar, I believe, should be done, and we think it should be that circle of influence, but a lot more, we can't do it alone, so happy to collaborate with anybody. Yeah.
If I could just take one more minute. So we've done a returnable grant program, in fact, with women's, and of course very successful because the money comes back. Incidentally, I've also the Sheening Alumni, last year we did it with the British Council and British High Commission on people with disabilities. So we really have a very wide range of models ready for us to
We would be happy to collaborate, ma'am.
scale. Thanks.
Thank you.